The lecture hall buzzed with the nervous chittering of 200 students, their scales rustling against polymer seats as Professor Velkrin adjusted his hollow display. I settled into my spot in the back row, my four eyes scanning the room while my tentacles coiled comfortably beneath the desk. "All right, settle down." Velkrin's voice boomed across the amphitheater. His crimson skin darkened with annoyance as the chatter continued. "Today we begin the most critical module of Xenobiology 401, Deathworld Survival." That got everyone's attention. The room fell silent faster than a vacuum breach. "Now," Velkrin continued, his mandibles clicking with satisfaction, "who can tell me what defines a death world?" A Thraxian in the front row raised 3 of her 6 arms. "A planet with a hostile classification rating of 8.5 or higher, Professor, where the native life forms have evolved under extreme competitive pressure." "Correct, Mira. And today, we will be discussing the most terrifying death world in known space." He paused for dramatic effect, letting the tension build. "Earth. Oh, for the love of the great void. Not this again." I tried to sink lower in my seat. "But when you have purple skin and stand 2 meters tall even when slouched, subtlety is not exactly your strong suit." A few students glanced back at me. I pretended to be fascinated by my datapad. "Earth," Velkrin went on, warming to his subject like a star-going supernova, "is a Class 9.2 death world. It harbors over 8 million species, 90% of which have evolved specifically to kill, consume, or parasitize other organisms. The gravity alone would crush most of you like overripe fruit." A collective shudder rippled through the audience. I resisted the urge to roll all 4 of my eyes. "The atmosphere," he continued, pulling up a chemical breakdown, "contains 21% oxygen. Oxygen, that corrosive, combustible nightmare gas that rusts metal and ages cells at an accelerated rate. Humans breathe it like we breathe nitrogen. In fact, they will die without it in approximately 4 minutes." "Impossible," someone whispered. "Oh, it gets better." Velkrin was practically vibrating with excitement now. "Earth's surface temperature varies by over 100 degrees depending on location and season. It experiences regular catastrophic weather events. Hurricanes with winds exceeding 300 kilometers per hour, tornadoes that can tear buildings from their foundations, blizzards that bury entire cities." He pulled up an image of something with too many teeth and dead, black eyes. "This is a great white shark. An apex predator that has remained virtually unchanged for 400 million years because evolution looked at it and said, 'Yeah, that's good. No notes.' It can smell a single drop of blood in 25 million drops of water." Mira looked like she might faint. Her scales had gone completely pale. "And this," Velkrin switched images, "is a hippopotamus. It kills more humans per year than sharks, crocodiles, and lions combined. It can run at 30 kilometers per hour on land and bite with a force of over 8,000 newtons. For reference, that could crush most of your skulls like an eggshell." "Professor," a brave soul in the middle rows raised a trembling appendage. "If Earth is so deadly, how do humans survive there?" Velkrin's laugh was sharp and humorless. "Survive? My dear student, they do not simply survive. They are the apex predators. They are the death world monsters." Now several students were looking back at me. I focused very hard on my notes, trying to appear completely absorbed in transcribing the lecture. "Humans," Velkrin said, "evolved as persistence hunters. They cannot outrun their prey, cannot overpower it with strength, cannot inject venom or spray acid. So what did they do?" He leaned forward, his voice dropping to an ominous whisper. "They followed it. For days, weeks if necessary. Following, tracking, never stopping, never resting, until their prey literally died from exhaustion." The horror on everyone's faces would have been funny if it was not also deeply uncomfortable for me personally. They have binocular vision for tracking movement. They can sweat to cool themselves, allowing them to function in temperatures that would kill most species. Their bones are reinforced with calcium. Their skin can seal most wounds automatically. They have an entire system dedicated to identifying and destroying foreign organisms in their bodies. "Surely that is exaggeration," someone protested weakly. "Is it?" Velkrin pulled up another image. "This is a human named Marcus Luttrell. He survived being shot multiple times, falling off a cliff, and evading enemy combatants for 4 days with a broken back and shrapnel wounds. This is Julianne Koepke, who fell 3,000 meters when her aircraft disintegrated, then walked through the jungle for 10 days with a broken collarbone and ruptured ligaments to reach civilization. The room had gone completely silent. You could have heard a scale drop. They are born with the ability to throw objects with lethal accuracy, a trait almost unique in the galaxy. They bond with other species for companionship, often the very predators that would hunt them. They ingest known toxins for pleasure and call it spicy food or alcohol. I could feel dozens of eyes on me now. This was getting ridiculous. In short, Velkrin concluded, humans are walking nightmares wrapped in flesh, driven by an inexplicable desire to pet things that could kill them and jump out of perfectly functioning aircraft for something they call fun. He turned off the holo display and faced the class with a grave expression. If you ever encounter a human in your xenobiological fieldwork, you will follow 3 rules. Do not run, as it triggers their chase instinct. Do not threaten them, as they respond to danger with overwhelming aggression. And absolutely, under no circumstances, do you challenge them to any contest involving endurance, creativity, or spite. You will lose. That was when a Quilvan in the 3rd row, bless his simple heart, raised his wing and asked the question I had been dreading. Professor Velkrin, have you ever actually met a human? The professor's skin flushed darker. Well, no, but the documentation is quite. I have, I said quietly. Every single head, antenna, eye stalk, and sensory organ in that lecture hall swiveled toward me with the synchronization of a military drill. The silence that followed was so complete, I could hear the environmental systems humming in the walls. Professor Velkrin's mandibles hung open. I beg your pardon. I sighed, uncurling my tentacles and sitting up straighter. I said I have met a human. Actually, I have met several hundred humans. I lived on Earth for 2 years. The gasps that followed sounded like air escaping from 200 punctured habitats simultaneously. You survived at Deathworld. Myra's voice cracked on the last word. For 2 years. Well, yes, but it was not exactly impossible. Velkrin sputtered, his skin cycling through shades of crimson and purple that I was pretty sure indicated both fury and disbelief. No non-adapted species could survive Earth's hellish environment for that long. The gravity alone would. The gravity was fine after the first week. I interrupted, trying to keep my voice calm. You build up muscle mass. It is actually great for skeletal density. My doctor says my bone strength improved 30%. A Delzorian in the front row looked like her brain was short-circuiting. But the oxygen, the corrosive atmosphere. Oxygen is lovely once you get used to it. Makes you feel energized. And the atmospheric pressure is quite pleasant, honestly. Very stable. Velkrin was slowly turning a shade of purple I had never seen before. This is absurd. You expect us to believe that you, a civilian researcher, casually lived among the galaxy's most dangerous predators without incident. I did not say without incident. I pulled out my datapad and started scrolling through my photo archive. I said I lived there. There were definitely incidents. What kind of incidents? Someone whispered, terrified and fascinated in equal measure. Well, I began, pulling up a picture. There was the time my neighbor's cat brought a dead bird into my apartment at 3 in the morning. Or when I accidentally signed up for something called a marathon because I misunderstood what fun run meant. Oh, and the incident with the grocery store, the peanut butter, and the very confused police officer. The blank stares I received suggested my attempt at humor was not landing. Velkrin crossed his arms. If you truly lived on Earth, then you can tell us about the humans. Are they really as terrifying as the documentation suggests? I thought about my former roommate, Jenny Park, who cried during animated movies and once spent 4 hours trying to save a spider from her bathtub instead of just killing it. I thought about old Mr. Hendricks next door, who baked cookies for the entire apartment complex every Sunday. I thought about the kids who played in the park below my apartment, laughing and sharing snacks with the local wildlife. Terrifying, I said slowly. Well, that depends on your definition. Do they hunt for sport? A student called out. Some do, but it is regulated. Most humans buy their food from stores, pre-killed and packaged. Very convenient. Do they really bond with predators? Another asked. I pulled up a photo of Jenny with her dog, a golden retriever named Biscuit. This is a domesticated canine, descended from wolves. Humans selectively bred them over thousands of years to be companions. Biscuit's hobbies included napping, eating shoes, and demanding belly rubs from strangers. Demanding? Mira looked confused. He would roll over and make sad noises until you petted his stomach. It was a whole thing. Very manipulative, actually. He had Jenny completely trained. Velkrin was staring at me like I had grown a fifth eye. You are telling me that humans allow predators to live in their homes and submit to the predator's demands. Well, when you phrase it like that, it sounds weird. It is weird. Listen, I said, standing up properly now. My full height made a few students in nearby rows scoot back nervously. Humans are complicated. Yes, they evolved on a death world. Yes, they are incredibly resilient and adaptable, and frankly kind of terrifying when you think about their biology too hard. But they are also the species that has global organizations dedicated to saving endangered species. They write poetry about sunsets. They invented jazz music, which is chaotic but oddly beautiful. Poetry will not save you from a persistence predator, Velkrin said darkly. Maybe not, but context matters. Do you want to know what the actual scariest thing about humans is? The entire room leaned forward. It is not their endurance or their aggression or their ability to survive horrific injuries. It is their pattern recognition and their spite. I pulled up another image, this one showing a complex mathematical equation. When humans decide something is impossible, they take it personally. They invented powered flight because they looked at birds and said, "We should be able to do that too." They went to their moon, not because it was easy, but specifically because it was hard. That makes no sense, someone muttered. Exactly. They climbed the tallest mountain on their planet because it was there. They split the atom because they wanted to know if they could. They look at the universe's limitations as personal challenges. You tell a human something cannot be done, and they will spend years proving you wrong out of pure stubbornness. Velkrin had recovered some of his composure. This is all very interesting, but you still have not explained how you, specifically, survived. Oh, that is simple, I said. I made friends. Friends? Yes, with humans. I became roommates with Jenny. We watched television shows together. She taught me how to make pancakes. I taught her some Quillrothi meditation techniques. Her mother sent me care packages with homemade jam. The lecture hall was so quiet, I could hear my own heartbeat. You are saying, Velkrin said slowly, carefully, as if testing each word, that the secret to surviving Earth's apex predators is befriending them. Friendship is a survival strategy that humans take very seriously, I confirmed. If they decide you are part of their social group, they will defend you with the same terrifying persistence they use for everything else. Jenny once threatened to fight her supervisor because he was rude to me at a company event. Her supervisor was twice her size. What happened? Mira asked. The supervisor apologized. Humans respect that kind of loyalty. It is why they are so successful as a species. They do not just survive as individuals. They build communities, alliances, entire civilizations based on cooperation. Professor Velkrin looked like he had bitten into something sour. His skin had settled into a mottled shade of burgundy that screamed frustrated academic. This is highly irregular. The documented evidence clearly states that humans are dangerous, unpredictable, and prone to violence. Oh, they absolutely can be all of those things, I agreed cheerfully. But so can most species when threatened. The difference is that humans have built elaborate social structures specifically to avoid being those things most of the time. They invented laws, philosophy, ethics. They argue about morality constantly. It is exhausting but also kind of admirable. A student in the middle section raised a shaky appendage. But what about the stories? The wars, the weapons, the historical conflicts. All true, I admitted. Humans have done terrible things to each other throughout their history. But they also remember those terrible things. They teach their children about their mistakes. They build museums and memorials to remember the cost of violence. They say, never again, and they mean it, even if they do not always succeed. I pulled up another photo, this one showing a massive crowd of humans holding signs and marching peacefully through a city street. This is what humans do when they disagree with their governments. They organize, they protest, they vote. Most of them, anyway. They would rather argue for years than fight for 5 minutes. Most. Velkrin pounced on the word like a predator spotting weakness. No species is perfect, Professor. Not even us. But humans try. Sometimes they fail spectacularly, but they keep trying. That is the part your documentation probably misses. Mira had been furiously taking notes. She looked up with all 6 eyes wide. What was the most dangerous situation you encountered on Earth? I thought for a moment. Probably the time I went hiking with Jenny and we encountered a bear. The collective intake of breath nearly changed the atmospheric pressure in the room. A bear, Velkrin repeated flatly. You encountered a biological killing machine in its natural habitat and survived. Well, yes, but we followed protocol. We made ourselves look bigger, backed away slowly, did not run. The bear decided we were not interesting and wandered off to eat berries, or whatever bears do. It was actually kind of anticlimactic. What did Jenny do? She took a picture for something called social media. Then she bought me ice cream because I was shaking so hard I could barely walk. She said I earned it for not panicking. I smiled at the memory. Mint chocolate chip. Humans invented ice cream, by the way. Frozen sweetened dairy products. Completely unnecessary for survival, but absolutely wonderful. A Volthian in the back raised his claw hesitantly. Did you ever feel like you were in danger from the humans themselves? That was a fair question. I considered it carefully. Once, there was a man on the subway who was acting erratically, shouting at passengers. I did not understand the social context and moved away from him. Before I could react further, 3 other humans stepped between us. Complete strangers. They asked if I was okay, stayed with me until my stop, made sure I got off safely. One of them gave me her contact information in case I needed help. Why would they do that? The Volthian asked, genuinely confused. Because I looked scared. Because they could help. Because that is what humans do. They have this concept called pay it forward, where you help others not for reward, but because someone once helped you. It is inefficient from a resource standpoint, but incredibly effective for building social trust. Velkrin was pacing now, his claws clicking against the floor. This contradicts decades of xenobiological research. If humans are so friendly and cooperative, why are they classified as a Class 9.2 Deathworld species? Because both things are true, Professor. I met his gaze with all 4 of my eyes. Humans are dangerous because they evolved to survive conditions that would kill most of us. They have incredible endurance, adaptability, and resilience. They can be violent, aggressive, and territorial when threatened. But they are also capable of extraordinary compassion, creativity, and cooperation. They are complicated. That is what makes them fascinating. I pulled up one final image, a photo Jenny had taken of the 2 of us at her family gathering. Her arm was around my shoulders, both of us smiling at the camera, surrounded by her relatives who had spent the entire day asking me questions about my homeworld and making sure I tried every single dish at their feast. This is Thanksgiving, a human holiday where they gather with family and friends to share food and express gratitude. Jenny's grandmother spent 6 hours cooking because she wanted to make sure I had enough to eat. Her nephew asked me 1,000 questions about space travel. Her father taught me how to play a card game called poker, then laughed when I won because apparently I have an excellent poker face. The room was silent again, but it was a different kind of silence now, thoughtful rather than terrified. Here is what I learned living on Earth, I said quietly. Humans are people. Weird, contradictory, occasionally baffling people, but people nonetheless. They love their families. They worry about their jobs. They stay up too late watching shows they have already seen. They adopt animals and treat them like children. They cry at weddings and laugh at funerals and do a million illogical things that somehow make perfect sense when you understand the context. I looked directly at Velkrin. Your documentation is not wrong, Professor. Earth is a death world, and humans are death world predators. But that is not all they are. If we want to understand them well enough to work with them, build alliances with them, share the galaxy with them, we need to see the complete picture. Velkrin stood very still for a long moment. Then, slowly he nodded. You raise valid points. Perhaps the curriculum requires updating. Perhaps it does. He turned to address the class. Assignment change. Instead of writing a research paper on theoretical death world survival strategies, you will be interviewing our guest here about practical experience living among humans. Minimum 3,000 words, due next cycle. The collective groan from 200 students was music to my ears. As the class began packing up, Mira approached my desk cautiously. Would you really be willing to answer our questions? Of course. Though I should warn you, my stories tend to be less about dramatic survival and more about things like the time I accidentally used salt instead of sugar in a cake recipe and Ginny ate it anyway to be polite. "What is cake?" I grinned, which probably looked alarming given my teeth. "Oh, we are going to have so much to talk about." As students began clustering around, asking questions, passing me their contact information, requesting interviews, I caught Velkrin watching from his desk. He looked thoughtful, his skin finally settling into a calmer shade of amber. Maybe, just maybe, the galaxy was ready to learn that monsters could also be friends. That Deathworlds produced not just survivors, but poets. That the scariest thing about humans was not their capacity for violence, but their capacity for hope, or maybe they just needed to hear it from someone who had shared an apartment with one and lived to tell the tale. Either way, I had about 200 research papers worth of stories to share. Ginny would find this hilarious. I made a mental note to call her later. She would want to know that I had finally convinced someone that humans were not actually terrifying nightmare creatures. Well, not entirely, anyway.